Peace, peace, peace. I am Phillip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the January 25th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are tuned in on Facebook Live. Shouts to those who are watching on YouTube Live. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And last but not least, props to those of you who are tuned in on Instagram. I know the stragglers, but again, head on over to YouTube so you can get the full viewing experience. So listen, I was debating whether I was gonna have a show tonight, but I'm like, it's Monday. I'm feeling good. I got some issue on my mind that I wanted to get off, and so I have a platform for that to take place. So why wouldn't I use it? So, what's taking place in the NFL when it comes to I hate the term minority, black, indigenous, people of color coaches. That's the new hip slang, right? The black, indigenous, people of color. No, I'm talking about black folk in particular. No shade to anybody else, but I'm talking about black folk in particular, and how, and as you can see, as the subtitle says, the oxymoron continues when it comes to hiring black people. And so I don't know why I became passionate about this over the last 72 hours. That's a lie, right? That's a lie. So it first started, and shout out to Lola in the background, man, who walking around looking for food. You're not gonna get food right now, right? You just not gonna get it. But on a serious note, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles hired Nick Sirianni to be their new head coach. Had no idea who he was, had no idea he was in the running to being a head coach after they fired one Douglas Peterson. And shout out to Doug Peterson, he brought the Eagles a Super Bowl. Deuce Staley, who I'll get to in a bit, he also interviewed for that job when Doug Peterson interviewed. And Doug was he was like the third or fourth choice. And so it goes to show that you can still have success even if you're not the first, second, third, or fourth choice. But with what really grinded my gears with Nick Sirianni is not only did I not know he was a coaching candidate and he was the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts under Frank Wright, who they credit for Carson Wentz having such an amazing year back in, sheesh, what is it now, 2017. And we know that he's regressed. And so they're saying, listen, all right, he was successful under this coach. Let's go get somebody from his tree. And so they hired Nick Sirianni. So I didn't know. Apparently, the media wasn't aware of it initially. And you know who else wasn't aware of it? One Nick Sirianni. And so I want you to take a look at this tweet from Jess Seversky, who's a sports reporter here in Philadelphia. Jeff Skversky. I don't know if I said that right. But he says Eagles coach Nick Sirianni was on vacation earlier this week when the Eagles called for an interview, and Sirianni did not have a suit with him. What does that say to you? What it says to me is that I had no idea that I was in a running to being a head coach. I was just going on vacation to have spend some time with my family, spend some time with my friends, and prayerfully not get COVID. But lo and behold, I get a call from the Philadelphia Eagles saying, hey, we want to interview for our head coaching job. He wasn't on the radar of any other teams, right? But yet, here he is, suitless. Suitless. And we know that's a big thing in corporate America. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to present the best you. And so you don't say no when somebody seeks you out to potentially interview you for a job, especially if it's one of your career goals. So Sirianni, as you see, wore casual clothes he had with him, and Eagles management did the same thing to make him feel comfortable. And Al Latif, shout out to Al Latif who's tuned in. He says, privilege be strong. And that's the same thing I thought soon as I read it. Hot damn. How good is it to be a candidate for a job that you didn't even know, you didn't even apply for? When does that ever happen for black folk? Just in general, outside of the sports world. When does that ever happen? Where you just wake up one day and folk are like, yo, I want to interview you for this job. And it's just like, wait, what? Well, when can I come in for the interview? You know what? We're going to Zoom this. Right? We're going to Zoom this. Go ahead. You stay where you at. But I don't have anything quote unquote professional to wear. It's all right. Wear what you want. Wear your flip flops, your t-shirt. Mind boggling. Mind boggling. And so the argument is that a lot of people make, but not a lot of people. The argument that white people make is that it's the owners should be able to hire whoever it is that they want. I have no issue with that. But don't sit, if you're the NFL, and create this rule called the Rooney Rule and then continue to move the goalpost. Right? So the Rooney Rule is they're supposed to hire, and they use the term minority, they're supposed to hire a minority, they're not supposed to hire a minority head coach, they're supposed to interview minority head coaches, whether it's a woman, a person of color, but they have to interview someone. And so my screen just went out. Give me a second. That's always fun. We back? All right, we back. Shout out to Zoom. Because if you want to Zoom and join the conversation, 838-0557-0889 is, no, it wasn't you, is how you can join this conversation. I don't know what's up with Zoom. Maybe it's I'm speaking truth to power too much and they just want to shut a brother Mike off. I have no idea. Right? But they're supposed to at least interview a minority individual. And so they have the token minority in the building, someone who they've interviewed before, and that would be one Deuce Staley, who's literally been with the organization for at least 10 to 15 years. Matter of fact, longer than that. He was a star running back. He was a coach. And so when he interviewed before the 2017 season, we knew he wasn't going to get the job. But it's just like, you know what? He's doing everything that they've told black coaches to do. Now, what do they tell black coaches to do? You need experience. You got to get experience. So you want to get on the staff. You want to move up the ranks. Right? You want to go from the mailroom to the penthouse, to the big office suite. So you might start off as a quality control coach. Then you move up to a tight ends coach. Then you might be a coordinator. And then you know what? One day, you just might be a head coach. And so unfortunately for Deuce, he bought into that. They gave Deuce the title of assistant head coach and running backs coach. He was a critical component of them winning the Super Bowl back in 2018. They also said that he was the bad cop to Doug Peterson's good cop, which we know is needed in systems, right? Especially when you're dealing with people. That's how you keep things fresh, keep people, hold people accountable, keeps things lively. And he played that role like a G. And so they fired Doug Peterson, who loses a power struggle to Carson Wentz. And so losing that power struggle, they realize we're going to keep this this $35 million a year quarterback. We need all new people in the building. But you know what, Deuce? You're under contract, so we're going to let you sit. Matter of fact, we're going to interview you. Because everybody loves you. Everybody in the building loves you, Deuce. Isn't that how it be? They love that token blackie, don't they? Shout out to the young poet laureate. She's the new token blackie. Where white folk are clamoring to get her in spaces. Teach us. We want to know. In the summertime, it was who? Who was it? How to be an anti-racist. Ibram Kennedy, right? Ibram Kendi. They gonna find they token blackies. And black folk take their bread. I ain't mad at it. Because we know. We know what's going on. And so Deuce, he interviews for the job. Next thing you know, as I showed you in that tweet, they're calling somebody on vacation with their family, somewhere off in the tropics, saying, hey, put on your chacletas. Put on your tank top. We want to interview you. And it's a slap in the face. And Deuce Staley asks for his release, which is granted. Now Deuce Staley is the assistant head football coach and running backs coach for the Detroit Lions, who recently hired a new coach. And I just want you to see the individual that they hired. Watch this.
I wanted this job bad because I felt like I knew this community. I played here, all right? Philosophy, you're going to say, well, what's this team going to be? What's it not going to be? Here's what I know, all right? I know that Detroit's made up of great people, some really good people, all right? This community is strong. This place has been kicked, it's been battered, it's been bruised, and I can sit up here and give you coach speak all day long. I can give you, hey, we're going to win this many games. I can't. None of that matters, and you guys don't want to hear it anyway. You've had enough of that shit, so excuse my language, all right? Here's what I do know, is that this team is going to take on the identity of this city, all right? And this city's been down, and it found a way to get up, all right? It's found a way to overcome adversity, all right? And so this team's going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth, all right? And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up. And then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
This is the person who who Deuce Staley has to report to. He's talking about biting kneecaps and pulling groins, punching people in the face, and I don't give a F. Wait, what? First off, isn't this the idea, the mindset of it? Isn't this the mindset that you have to be an NFL head coach, whether you talk about it or not? Isn't this the mindset that Bill Belichick has, that Mike Tomlin has, that Brian Flores has? But white folk were all in a tizzy. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And I understand why Detroit Lion fans are so excited. Because they've been trash. Winning 1 playoff game in the last 30 plus years. But the last time they went to the playoffs was with who? Jim Caldwell. And even though he went 10-6, and then he had a little bit of a down year afterwards, they let him go. And then they hired Matt Patricia, who is sloppy, disgusting looking, and not only that, he couldn't win a game. Problematic, but think about the logic, think about the thought process. Think about what's accepted. Think about what's accepted. And so it's a slap in the face for black head coaches or those who aspire to be black head coaches. Right now, there are only two. You have the long tenured Mike Tomlin. Because listen, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they just don't fire coaches just to fire them. And then you have Brian Flores of the Miami Dolphins. And unfortunately, what takes place is, outside of Mike Tomlin, if a black person gets a job, it's usually the worst job in the league. The Miami Dolphins were supposed to go winless last year. But lo and behold, Brian Flores, who has a pedigree, who has the ability to coach his ass off, won several games. And they were mad at him for that. Because he was supposed to go winless so they can get Joe Burrow. Or Tua, potentially. You know who also coached the Miami Dolphins as an interim head coach? The man who you just saw talking about biting kneecaps. And he couldn't last. Think about what they say that the NFL head coach is supposed to represent. Both them and the quarterback are supposed to be the CEO of the franchise. Was that CEO-ish, what we just watched? Or was it a caricature? He was the tight ends coach and assistant head coach in New Orleans. He wasn't as accomplished as Eric Bieniemy, who supposedly doesn't interview well, but yet all he does is win, win, win. Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. The Philadelphia Eagles went a step lower and attempted to interview Eric Bieniemy, who said, "Nah, I'm good." But they interviewed Mike Kafka, who's the quarterback's coach of that team. How wild is that? They say Eric Bieniemy doesn't interview well. What does that mean exactly? What does that mean exactly? But we know that this type of rhetoric tends to come out when there's black and brown folk interviewing for positions. They look for ways to discredit him. Because you can't do it by his resume. He doesn't necessarily speak well. His vision doesn't align with our vision. What they probably said to Deuce Staley, who said, "Listen, I'm not coddling a 26-year-old, 27-year-old quarterback." Now Eric Bieniemy is relegated potentially to the Houston Texans, whose black quarterback has said, "No, I'm out of here. There's too much dysfunction," after they gave all the power to a white man, Bill O'Brien, prior to. And who got rid of all the best talent. And they continued to employ him. See, that's the privilege of being white in these type of systems. In all systems. They keep you on. Whether it's nepotism. I think about The Wire and Prez Belusky. No matter how bad you are, no matter what the results are, they'll find a way to keep you. Raheem Morris got two seasons in Tampa where he went 10-6 and then he had a losing record. They got him out of here. He had to go all the way back to being a secondary coach, then moving up to being a defensive coordinator. It's like for black folk, they continue to knock you down rungs. And you have to start the process all over again. We're seeing it now with Leslie Frazier, the defensive coordinator who in Buffalo. We're seeing it with Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. In Tampa Bay, as Lewis Jones III put, they have four 4 black assistants, and I'm going to pull their picture up now. All the major coordinators in the Tampa Bay Bucks are black. Todd Bowles, Harold Goodwin, Byron Leftwich, who you hear nothing about, and Keith Armstrong. Shout out to Bruce Arians. Because that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take a white person to say, listen, I don't give a about what you're doing. About what y'all saying is this is how it goes. The good old boy system. I'm trying to win. You don't get opportunities like that. So I'm bringing the best available. He also hired a woman. One of the first to do it. And so when we sit and we think about just how problematic this is, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 head coaching jobs that have been filled. As I said, there's only 2 people, Mike Tomlin and Brian Flores, who are head coaches right now. The New York Jets, they hired Robert Saleh. I believe he's Lebanese. He's Muslim. Still white. Kudos to them for hiring a Muslim brother. He's still white. The Falcons, instead of potentially looking at Raheem Morris, who was the interim coach, as their initial coach had got fired, they went and hired Arthur Smith. Who is Arthur Smith, you ask? He is the son of FedEx CEO. He is the son of the FedEx CEO. He got his start in Washington with the Redskins. And as you see, I don't know if you can see my shirt, the Caucasians. I got the bootleg version, Caucasians. I made it myself. I just didn't know what I was doing. The now Washington football team, that's where he got his start. What was the name of their stadium? What is the name of their stadium? FedEx Field. Told you about that nepotism, right? Raheem Morris, one of the players, the former players, reached out to him, Ryan Clark, and asked him about his thoughts on the Falcons job. And he said, listen, I knew I had to be perfect. I had to win every game if I was going to be considered for that job. Because unfortunately for black folk, we gotta be three times as good. I did something I don't typically do. I called into the radio station on Friday because anytime they have conversations about race, I try to bring myself to the forefront. That's how I want to have a conversation about that. And shout out to Mikey Miss for having that conversation. And you got white folk after white folk calling in saying, listen, Deuce Staley wasn't necessarily better for them. They had a poll where 50 to 60% said they didn't see an issue with the hiring. You know, it's the same old song, we don't see race, which is racist in itself. That means you get to be oblivious to things that are taking place in society that doesn't impact you. And we all do it, right? That's why I can empathize with them. For black men, it might be not understanding the struggles of black women. It's not understanding the struggles of trans persons. So I'm sure we all can be guilty of it at times. But unfortunately, it plays out the same way time and time again. And so I called in to say, and I thought about it. They are who they are. Right? Was it the great Maya Angelou and Meek Mill who said, when people show you who they are, you should believe them? I think it was Meek. I blame Deuce Staley. And it was out of love that I blamed him. These white folk have shown you who they are for the last 70 years. They had to implement a rule to force a team to interview you even if they didn't want you. And you thought you was going to get a fair shake. You thought that they weren't going to move the goalposts for you. You thought you were just going to climb the corporate ladder to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and everything was going to be A-okay. No, Deuce. That's not how this goes. It's not how any of this goes. We understand how white supremacy works. We understand how capitalism works. If you were truly in their plans, they would have hired you the first time. Instead of giving you this role because, oh, we like you. They liked Benson too. But he was still the butler, there to do the work. And now that I sit and think about it, for him to be the bad cop, for him to have to keep it real, he was playing himself out of a job from the get-go. Because then when they have to make the choice between the quarterback and the coach, they're not going to go to who they use to be the bad guy. That's not how this goes. You had to be 3 times as good as what's this white man's name? Nick Sirianni, who could have been average. You had to be 3 times as good. You couldn't just be the running back coach. You had to be the running backs coach. You had to be the offensive coordinator. You had to go get the muffins from the store. You had to shuck and jive. You ain't do that, Deuce. And so how could you ever think that they was going to take a chance on you? Look at the landscape. Look at the landscape. It's been people that have been more successful than Duke that still can't get a whiff. Eric Bieniemy won a Super Bowl last year. Didn't get a whiff. On the verge of winning another this year. Still hasn't gotten a whiff. And if he does get hired by the Houston Texans, he's walking into having to fix shit. See, that's what they do to black folk. Shit gotta be so discombobulated, so fractured, so problematic for them to say, you know what? We gonna bring you in. Miami Dolphins with Brian Flores. The Houston Astros with Dusty Baker. Right? That whole cheating scandal where people getting fired left and right. Let's bring in this Negro. They good at fixing things. Because it's the optics too. Let's make him the mouthpiece. They do it all the time. I talked about it last week with the American Psychiatric Association, who has an upcoming webinar about systemic racism in psychiatry. And they have mostly black MDs and one Asian woman having a discussion about racism. Even though I firmly believe that all of us mental health professionals perpetuate racism and anti-blackness, it's not our job to have to answer for this. Who's asking the questions? And so when we talk about how do we fix this, right? I tried to formulate a list. Before I formulate the list, I want to get back to who else was hired. Urban Meyer, right? Former, and he's been successful as hell as a college coach. Don't know a thing about the NFL. Because when you win national championship after national championship, you could go recruit. You can go get the best talent. This is not like that. But again, come on in, Urban. We welcome you. Then last but not least, you have this Chargers who hired some guy named Staley. I don't know his first name. I don't really care. In 2016, this Staley person was coaching the defense at John Carroll University, a Division III program in Ohio. So in that next year, Deuce Staley is being interviewed for a head coaching position. This month was at Division III, John Carroll University in Ohio. See, what they do is they'll go above and beyond. They'll go into the depths of obscurity to find people. Meanwhile, they got black folk who are out here winning Super Bowls, brilliant offensive mind, defensive minds, special team minds, who can't get a sniff. And so when I start to think about, well, how do we fix this? What first comes to mind is y'all man Jay-Z. You want to have a conversation with Jay-Z? You pay me. That's who he is, ain't he? He Mr. F, you pay me. Who gives a damn about the community? This partnership that he's boasted about, that he skewered Colin Kaepernick for. Because what? We're beyond kneeling. What has he done in the 2-3 years that he's been there? Oh, we got black folk shucking and jiving at the Super Bowl, right? Who was the black folk prior? It was Shakira, it was J-Lo. And yes, I'm just going to call them black folk. I'm trying to delineate between the difference. Listen, they just got dropped off a little sooner. That slave ship was an Uber pool. They stopped at Haiti. They stopped in Mexico. They stopped Puerto Rico. Then they made it over here. The thing is, just whoever was the last person, which was black folk here in America, we just had to pay the whole tab. This year they got her and they got Jasmine Sullivan. I don't even begrudge them. Because they just trying to live. I blame y'all mans. Hove. It's your boy. I've seen coalition commercials talking about the work that's taking place in urban communities. I've seen commercials where they're trying to garner empathy from situations of police-involved murders that weren't even apples to what we've been out here protesting about. Those grassroots protests. I ain't hear Jay say nothing about any of this. Why? Because what he got going on? He CEO, venture capitalist, whatever he got going on with his little marijuana business, selling $75 joints. The irony in that. But Jay-Z ain't the answer. Even though they built it up to be a great partnership and something beautiful was going to happen for the black community. This brother Jason Reed, amazing writer for the Undefeated. I watched him on Twitter yesterday literally beg white folk for an opportunity. Talking about, look at these amazing black folk doing great things, but yet they can't get hired. His heart was in the right place. But again, what is we talking about here? What are we talking about? What is it that we want? A part of me is like, yo, you get what you got. And if that's nothing, that's nothing. Because the system is the system, the structure is the structure. It's the same thing I say to Dave Chappelle, who tested positive for COVID. Y'all know how I feel about that. Listen, you out in these streets and you catch COVID. I'm not a praying person anyway, but if I did have I have thoughts though. I'm not gonna offer my thoughts if you out here reckless. If you taking pictures with Joe Rogan and all of these other folk, I don't necessarily know if I have that to give. I might give you a fist, but you out here living reckless. It's unfortunate. You know what you got into. This the life that you chose. This ain't the life that chose you. We keep trying to this is the equivalent of what they talk about, the defunding the police. Let's take some bread away. Let's reallocate the money. Instead of tearing them up, go down and starting over. I saw somebody say the players should boycott. For who? For what? At first I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. But is that really going to solve the real underlying issue, which is the anti-blackness? It's not. Then I start thinking about, well, what if the media pressed the issue? That's what I said to Mike when I called in the radio. The Tim McManuses, the Les Bowens, the Jeff Skaverskys. They need to press this issue in the press conferences. Why not Deuce? Why not attempt to interview other black candidates? But what they're going to say is we felt, we interviewed Deuce. We thought he was a viable candidate. But it was something about this Nick Sirianni guy. Outside of the fact that he's Italian and South Philly, I'll let y'all draw your own conclusions from that. Oh yeah, this Nick Sirianni guy went out and hired a all-white staff, so that led me to tweet #Eagles so white. Again, they are who they are. But what is bad press going to do? Bad press is good press. Right? They're still going to be billionaires. The valuation of the Philadelphia Eagles is probably several $billion. So yeah, it's going to be some attention. Oh, you shouldn't have did this. But they didn't stop playing for Cap. Right? Even though Jeff Lurie, he made his feelings known about that Kaepernick situation, but nobody really talks about that. We know what side he's on. And it's always the liberal whites, right? But this press isn't going to do anything, because it's always going to be another story. It's too much money on the line. So boycotting and bad press, yeah, that's not going to happen. Starting another league. See, Kyrie Irving had that right in the summertime when he said, listen, we should just leave the NBA alone and go do our own thing. But now you got those well-meaning good Negroes, who I think is the greatest basketball player of all time. One LeBron Cleophas James. I don't know if his name is middle name is Cleophas. Who says, no, we're not going to do that. Doesn't even acknowledge Kyrie. He didn't enlist the help of Mr. Centrist himself, Mr. Panderer himself, one Barack Hussein Obama, who says, yeah, you should play. What else is he going to say? Again, people are who they are. But is starting another league a viable option? I mean, we talking about billions and billions of dollars. We're talking about the long game. We're talking about possible unsuccessful season after unsuccessful season monetarily. We're talking about taking losses, and who wants to take losses? And so I don't even necessarily know if that's a viable option, because that means that we all would have to be on one accord. That means that we require having a bigger imagination than many of us currently have. But you got to stay optimistic, right? That change gonna come. But I'm not optimistic. This is going to continue year after year. Sure, they're going to hire some black folk. They hired 4 black GMs this go round, this hiring cycle, which is going to be critical if black head coaches are going to be hired. Because just like they do, we got to do the same. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have the same complaints over and over again. But yeah, I'm pessimistic that anything is going to change. That's all I got, man. I feel like I've been talking forever. Shout out to Akoma. Those words weren't big, Todd. They was regular. Shout out to Marcel who's tuned in. I don't even know how many of y'all in here. I was hoping I'd get somebody to zoom in with a brother. I be wanting to live a Zoom life, you know what I mean? But nobody zoomed in. So I told y'all I might just be in my rant bag. But I'll give it a few more seconds before I head on out like SpongeBob meme. All right. Well, that's it for me. Listen, I appreciate you all tuning in. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm sure. I'm trying to get some folk on here, have some conversation. But until tomorrow, peace.